pain is not always visible. That is one of the most important things to understand about what is happening on the other side of your absence right now. The avoidant who hurt you, who withdrew from you, who managed the connection to a level that suited their comfort while you absorbed the cost of the imbalance, that person is not sitting in obvious, legible, socially visible distress. They are not falling apart in ways that would confirm to the outside world that something significant is happening in their interior. The composed exterior is still functioning. The self-sufficient presentation is still largely intact. The life continues to operate at its surface level with the specific practiced efficiency of someone whose defensive architecture has always been very good at maintaining the appearance of fine. But underneath the appearance, something is running that the appearance is working very hard to contain. And the working very hard is itself the evidence. Genuine fine does not require effort to maintain. Genuine okay does not produce the specific, slightly pressurized quality of someone whose composure is being held rather than simply inhabited. The effort is the tell. The maintenance is the signal. The specific quality of someone performing the absence of pain rather than simply experiencing the absence of pain is visible to anyone who looks closely enough and honestly enough at what is actually there. What is actually there is pain. Real, specific, poorly managed, privately consuming pain. Not the clean, philosophical, I understand why this happened pain of someone who has done adequate work on their own patterns and can sit with the consequences of those patterns from a position of genuine self-awareness and genuine accountability. The messier, less resolved, more genuinely difficult pain of someone whose interior is doing something that the exterior has not caught up to and may not catch up to for some time. This conversation is an honest examination of what that pain actually consists of, why it is specifically about you, and what it means. Not to provide comfort at their expense. Not to suggest their pain obligates you to anything, to see the full situation clearly, which has always been the most useful position available. The pain is real. Before examining its specific content and its psychological origins, this needs to be stated plainly without the qualifications that honest examination sometimes produces. The avoidance pain over you right now is genuine. It is not performance. It is not the strategic deployment of suffering to produce a specific response from you. It is not the managed, tolerable discomfort of someone who expected this outcome and is proceeding through it with adequate tools. It is genuine pain, the specific, bodily, difficult to route around variety of pain that arrives when something that was deeply encoded in the nervous system as significant is removed from the daily experience of life. Genuine pain deserves honest acknowledgement even when the person experiencing it contributed to the conditions that produced it, even when the choices they made were consequential and avoidable and the pain is the direct result of those choices. The pain being deserved in some karmic accounting sense does not make it less real as a human experience. The avoidant is a person. Persons in genuine pain are experiencing something real regardless of how the pain was produced. Acknowledging the reality of the pain is not the same as absolving the choices that produced it. Both things exist simultaneously without cancelling each other. The pain is real. It is significant, and it is specifically, precisely, exactly about you. Not about the loss of a relationship in the abstract. About you. The specific, particular, irreplaceable person who was present in their life and is now genuinely absent. The first dimension of the pain is the one that arrives most immediately and that has the most acute, pressurized quality in the early period of the genuine absence. It is the pain of the disrupted nervous system. The specific, physiological, below-conscious pain of an attachment system that has been calibrated to your presence and is now running that calibration in your absence, looking for the signal it has learned to expect, and consistently not finding it. Reaching for the specific, encoded, deeply familiar quality of your presence and encountering instead the specific, novel, genuinely unfamiliar quality of its absence. This is not metaphorical. The human nervous system genuinely encodes significant attachment figures in ways that produce real, physiological responses to their absence. The research on this is clear. Loss of significant attachment figures activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The body experiences the absence as something that needs to be addressed. The attachment system keeps generating the reaching behavior, the checking, the monitoring, the involuntary orienting toward the person who is absent. Because that is what attachment systems do when the significant person is not present. For someone with avoidant attachment, this process has a specific and particularly uncomfortable quality, because the defensive architecture was always working to prevent the conscious experience of the attachment's depth, was managing the felt sense of how significant the connection was to a level compatible with the self-sufficiency narrative, was routing the genuine attachment through channels that kept it from becoming undeniably present in the daily conscious experience. Your absence removes the routing. The attachment that was being managed at a comfortable level is now running at its actual level, which is considerably higher than the management was allowing it to be experienced as. And the experience of the attachment at its actual level in the conditions of your genuine absence is significantly more painful than the managed version of the connection was suggesting it would be. The avoidant is feeling the real size of the attachment for the first time in the worst possible conditions for feeling it. After the options for doing something productive with the feeling have been significantly reduced, in the specific, private, unwitnessed way of someone whose exterior presentation is maintaining the appearance of fine, while the interior is processing something that is not fine at all. The second dimension of the pain is more complex and more personally confronting than the physiological. It is the pain of genuine self-confrontation. The avoidant self-concept, the internal narrative they carry about the kind of person they are and how they operate in relationships, is encountering undeniable information that requires significant revision. The self-concept said certain things. It said they were self-sufficient, that the managed distance was a reasonable response to the specific challenges of intimacy rather than a fear-driven pattern that was consistently producing damage, that the withdrawals were appropriate calibrations rather than consequential choices, that the connection, while real, was something they could manage without more adequately than the current experience is demonstrating. All of these components of the self-concept are being tested by the current experience and finding that the testing produces uncomfortable results. The self-sufficiency is not performing as advertised. The managed distance, which was supposed to be a comfortable choice, is producing something in the absence of what it distanced from that is not comfortable. The withdrawals, which were supposed to be consequence-free, have accumulated into a consequence that is very specifically felt. The connection, which was supposed to be manageable without, is demonstrating through the specific quality of its absence exactly how unmanageable without it actually is. This confrontation with the gap between the self-concept and the lived experience is one of the most genuinely painful things available to a human being. More painful, in many ways, than the ordinary pain of loss. Because ordinary loss can be grieved without the grief requiring a fundamental revision of the self-concept. You can grieve someone you lost without it changing your understanding of who you fundamentally are. The specific pain the avoidant is experiencing cannot be cleanly grieved without the grief requiring exactly that revision. The loss is connected to the choices. The choices are connected to the patterns. The patterns are connected to the self-concept. And the self-concept, encountering the genuine cost of the patterns in the form of your genuine absence, is finding that the accounting does not support the version it has always been running. That kind of pain does not have a clean path through it. It is not the pain of something happening to you that can be processed and set down. It is the pain of something being revealed about you that requires genuine engagement with the revelation rather than management of its most uncomfortable implications. The third dimension is the pain of specific regret, not general, abstract regret about how things ended up. The specific, pointed, instance-attached regret of moments that are replaying with the uncomfortable quality of honest self-assessment rather than the manageable quality of ordinary memory. The specific moments are presenting themselves. The moment the withdrawal was chosen, at the point when staying would have changed everything. The moment the repair was offered, and not taken because taking it required a degree of vulnerability that the defensive architecture was not currently allowing. The moment the honest communication was managed rather than heard. The moment the warmth was pulled back, just as it was becoming something that could have been built on. The moment the connection deepened enough to activate the fear, and the fear won, and the withdrawal came, and you absorbed it, again with the specific grace of someone who kept believing the pattern could change. Each of these moments is arriving with the specific weight of what it produced, not abstractly, specifically, with you in the moment, with the specific quality of what you were offering, with the honest assessment of what was done with the offering. And the assessment, in the honest light of your genuine absence, does not produce comfortable conclusions. It produces the specific, personally confronting accounting of someone who sees clearly, possibly for the first time, what each of those moments actually was and what the choosing the familiar option in each of them actually cost. This regret is not pleasant to carry. It does not have the softening quality of time because the loss is still fresh and the time has not yet done the work of making the specific moments less vivid. It arrives with the full, undiminished weight of things that happened recently and cannot be undone and produce the specific, significant daily experience consequence of you not being there. The fourth dimension of the pain is about identity, about who the avoidant understood themselves to be in relation to the connection and what your absence is doing to that understanding. Throughout the dynamic, the avoidant occupied a specific position, the position of the one who needed less. Who was more self-sufficient? Whose emotional equilibrium was less dependent on the connection's maintenance than yours appeared to be? This position had a specific psychological function. It provided the specific reassuring evidence that the self-sufficiency narrative was accurate, that the managed distance was a genuine preference rather than a defended necessity, that the connection, while meaningful, was not one on which the avoidant's fundamental sense of self was dependent. Your absence is demonstrating the inaccuracy of this position in the most undeniable available form. The emotional equilibrium that was supposed to be robust and self-sustaining is not performing robustly or self-sustainingly. The self-sufficiency that was supposed to make the management of the connection comfortable is producing something in the conditions of its genuine loss that is not comfortable. The position of the one who needs less is turning out to have been sustained, in part, by your continued presence, your continued availability as the reference point against which the self-sufficiency was being demonstrated. Without you as the reference point, the self-sufficiency is demonstrating that its apparent robustness was partly dependent on the specific conditions that your consistent presence was providing. The solitude that was supposed to be comfortable is the specific, unwanted, differently textured solitude of someone whose interior is missing something it was quietly relying on. The independence that was supposed to be genuine is the specific, slightly hollow performance of independence in conditions that make the performance more difficult than it was when the evidence of your caring was available as the background against which the independence was being enacted. The identity disruption this produces is real and significant. Who the avoidant understood themselves to be in the relationship is turning out to be more complicated than the self-concept was representing. And the more complicated version, the version that acknowledges the genuine need, the genuine attachment, the genuine dependence on the specific quality of your presence, is a more honest version, but also a more vulnerable one. A version that requires the acknowledgement of things the defensive architecture was specifically built to prevent from being acknowledged. The fifth dimension of the pain is the loneliness, not the comfortable, chosen solitude that the avoidant self-sufficiency narrative describes as their preferred mode. The specific, unwanted, differently textured loneliness of someone who is missing a specific person in the specific ways that that specific person's presence made available. The avoidant had a specific experience in your presence that they may not have been fully conscious of having. The experience of being known. Not completely, the defensive architecture was always keeping the knowing at a managed level, preventing the full depth of genuine mutual knowing that the connection could have had if the pattern had been different, but at a level that exceeded what most of the avoidance relational experience provides. The specific quality of your attention, perceptive, genuinely interested, directed at the real person rather than at the managed presentation, produced an experience of being seen that the avoidant's ordinary relational life does not consistently provide. That experience is absent now, and its absence is the specific, targeted, impossible to substitute loneliness of someone who has had access to something genuinely rare and is now in a world that does not provide that specific quality of seeing. The ordinary social interactions, the acquaintances and the colleagues and the casual connections of daily life do not provide what your presence was providing, not because they are insufficient as people, because the specific quality of your attention and your genuine seeing was not ordinary, was something that the avoidant encountered in you specifically, and that is not automatically available elsewhere. The loneliness of missing out is the loneliness of missing something that cannot be easily replaced, not the generic loneliness of wanting company or wanting connection. The specific, qualified, precisely targeted loneliness of wanting this particular quality of genuine seeing that was available in this particular person and is now genuinely absent. The sixth dimension is the pain of the unanswered question, the specific, recurring, difficult to suppress question that the honest hours keep producing and that the management strategies keep working to contain but cannot fully silence. The question is about whether this was necessary, whether the dynamic had to go this way, whether the outcome that is currently being experienced, your genuine, complete, unperformed absence, was the inevitable result of unchangeable things, or whether it was the avoidable result of choices that could have been made differently. The honest answer to this question is uncomfortable, and the avoidance interior knows it. The outcome was not inevitable, was not the product of unchangeable incompatibility or neutral circumstance, was the product of specific, repeated, available to have been different choices made in the direction of the pattern rather than in the direction of genuine engagement. The withdrawals were not inevitable. The managed distance was not the only available response to the approach of genuine closeness. The repair that was offered and not taken could have been taken. The honest communication that was managed rather than heard could have been heard. The pain of the unanswered question is the pain of genuine possibility, of the sense that the outcome being experienced was not written in advance, was produced by choices. And choices that produce outcomes this costly are the specific, uncomfortable variety of choices that cannot be cleanly filed as simply what happened. They require the ongoing, active engagement of the self-evaluating function. They require the sitting with the specific weight of what was decided and what that deciding produced. The management strategies keep trying to convert the unanswered question into an answered one that produces less personal confrontation, into the story of incompatibility, into the narrative of different needs and different attachment styles, and the neutral, no one's fault collision of two people who simply could not work. That story is more comfortable. It is also less honest, and the honest interior keeps resisting the comfortable story, because the honest interior knows the difference between the genuine accounting and the managed version. The seventh dimension is about future fear, about what the experience of your absence is producing in the avoidance relationship with the future, and with the possibility of genuine connection in the future. The avoidant is encountering something specific and frightening in the current experience. The evidence that the patterns, the managed distance, the defensive architecture, the withdrawal from the approach of genuine closeness, produce a specific and serious outcome, not abstractly, specifically, in the form of your specific, genuine, daily experienced absence, in the form of the pain currently running in the private interior. And the encounter with this evidence produces a fear that is different from the fear of closeness that the defensive architecture was built to manage. The fear of closeness is the old fear, the known fear, the fear that has been running since the formative experiences that built the defensive architecture, and that the architecture is designed to prevent from becoming overwhelming. The new fear is the fear of the alternative, the fear of what the pattern produces when it runs to its natural conclusion. The fear of the specific, serious, personally experienced cost of the defensive architecture continuing to do what it has always done, of the pattern continuing to protect against the old fear at the cost of producing the new fear's specific daily experienced reality. This is the fear that has the potential to produce genuine change, not the fear of closeness. That fear has been present and has been motivating the pattern throughout the dynamic. The fear of the alternative, of the specific outcome the pattern produces. Of this, what is being experienced right now, the daily, ongoing, private, poorly managed pain of your genuine absence. Whether this fear motivates genuine change depends on what the avoidant does with it. Whether they allow it to reach the level of genuine motivation, or whether they manage it back to a tolerable level once the acute phase of the current experience passes. Whether the new fear remains louder than the old fear, or whether the old fear eventually reasserts its dominance when the new fear's immediacy reduces. The eighth dimension is the pain of missed connection, not the loss of the relationship in the general sense, the specific loss of the moments that were available and were not fully inhabited, the specific loss of the genuine connection that was possible and was not fully accessed, the specific loss of what the relationship could have been if the pattern had been interrupted earlier, if the defensive architecture had been engaged differently, if the genuine change that the relationship was always pointing toward had been chosen more readily and more consistently. This pain is the most difficult to sit with because it is organized around possibility rather than around actuality. It is the grief not of what was, but of what could have been. Of the version of the connection that existed as genuine potential, visible in the best moments, present in the unguarded interactions, available in the specific quality of what passed between two people when the managed distance was briefly not managing, and that never fully arrived. The moments of genuine connection that the dynamic contained, the specific, unguarded, actually meeting each other moments, when the defensive architecture was briefly not running at full capacity, are the most painful memories currently available because they demonstrate the existence of the thing that is now absent. They prove that it was real, that the genuine connection was possible, that the full version of what could have existed between two people who genuinely felt something for each other was available. And the pain of that proof, in the conditions of its genuine loss, is the specific targeted pain of something that was possible and was not fully lived. The ninth dimension is quiet and operates below most of the others in terms of its acuity, but is perhaps the most enduring in terms of its persistence. It is the pain of knowing that the person on the other side of the absence is okay, that you are surviving the departure, that your life is continuing and building and becoming more fully itself in the space that the dynamic was always occupying. That the absence, whatever it is for the avoidant, is for you the honest, forward-moving, genuine reorientation toward a life that is more fully yours. This knowledge, however it reaches the avoidant, through whatever indirect route the evidence of your continued functioning makes its way across the distance, is its own specific form of painful information, because it confirms something the self-sufficiency narrative was quietly using as a comfort, the narrative that said you needed the connection more than they did, that your investment was greater, that the dynamics imbalance was organized in a direction that meant your departure would cost you more than it cost them. The evidence that this narrative was wrong, that you are not only surviving the departure but building something genuine in its aftermath, that the absence is not destroying you in the ways the narrative predicted it would, is the specific uncomfortable confrontation with the full inaccuracy of the comfortable story. The story that made the taking for granted feel sustainable, that made the managed distance feel consequence-free. That made the pattern feel like something that could continue indefinitely because the person absorbing it would always absorb it. That story is not supported by the evidence. And the pain of the story failing to be supported is the specific, quietly persistent pain of someone whose operating framework has been comprehensively and undeniably revised. What does all of this mean for you? What is the honest, practical, self-respecting response to understanding that the avoidant is in genuine pain over your absence right now? The first honest answer is that it means nothing that requires action from you. The pain is real, and it is significant, and it is entirely the avoidance to carry. It was produced by their choices. It is theirs to sit with, process, and potentially grow from. Your role in producing it was simply to finally, honestly, genuinely choose yourself. That choice was correct. The pain it produced in someone else does not change its correctness. The second honest answer is that the pain confirms what the honest communication was always reporting. The size of the pain is the size of what was taken for granted. The specific, significant, daily experienced quality of the avoidance current interior is the honest measure of what your presence was worth, not the measure the dynamic was offering while it was running. The real measure, the one visible only in the subtraction. The third honest answer is that the pain does not automatically produce change. Pain is a motivator, it is not a transformer. The specific, genuine, privately consuming pain of your absence may produce the genuine reckoning that has the potential to change the patterns. Or it may be managed back to a tolerable level once the acute phase passes and the comfortable equilibrium is restored through whatever alternative means become available. Both outcomes are possible. Neither is in your control. Neither changes what you should do with your own life. What you should do with your own life is what you have been doing, building something genuine. Inhabiting the ordinary Tuesday with increasing fullness and increasing presence, directing the attention and the energy that the dynamic was consuming toward the actual, specific, genuinely valuable content of a life that is more fully yours than it was during the dynamic. The avoidance pain is real. Your life is also real. Both things are happening simultaneously in the honest accounting of the situation, and only one of them is yours to tend. Tend yours, completely, without guilt for having produced the other. The producing of it was not cruelty, it was honesty, the most specific and undeniable form of honesty available. The honesty of finally, genuinely choosing yourself. That choice was right, it remains right, even now. The pain the avoidant is carrying right now does not stay at a single level of intensity. It moves. It shifts through different phases with different qualities, and understanding the phases is part of understanding what is actually happening, rather than imagining it through the distorting lens of either hope or protective cynicism. The acute phase is the most intense and the most difficult to manage. It has the pressurized, urgent, everything is disrupted quality of something that has not yet found any accommodation within the existing psychological framework. The management strategies are working at maximum capacity and producing insufficient relief. The composed exterior is requiring more active maintenance than it typically requires. The specific daily repeated encounter with your absence as a real and present fact, rather than a temporary and reversible situation, is producing the full unmanaged weight of something the defensive architecture was not built to contain. This phase does not last indefinitely. It cannot. The human psychological system is not built to sustain maximum intensity disruption indefinitely. It adapts. The management strategies find new configurations. The acute intensity reduces. The pain does not disappear. It is not the kind of pain that simply resolves through the passage of time without genuine processing, but it changes in quality, becomes something that can be lived alongside rather than something that is actively overwhelming the capacity to function. The transition from the acute phase to the sustained phase is not a healing. It is an adaptation. And the distinction between healing and adaptation is one of the most important distinctions available in understanding what the avoidance interior is actually doing over time. Healing involves the genuine processing of what the pain is about. The honest engagement with the specific content of the regret and the disrupted self-concept, and the confrontation with the gap between who the avoidant understood themselves to be and who the evidence of the current experience is demonstrating they are. Healing requires the pain to be followed all the way back to its source rather than managed to a tolerable level. Requires the honest accounting to be completed rather than interrupted at the point where it becomes most uncomfortable. Requires the genuine reckoning with what the patterns produced and what changing them would actually require. Adaptation, by contrast, involves the management of the pain to a level that is compatible with continued functioning without the genuine processing that healing requires. The management strategies find new equilibrium. The narrative gets reconstructed into something more comfortable. The specific, pointed, personally confronting content of the pain gets filed in a way that reduces its urgency without genuinely addressing its honest implications. The avoidant continues to function. Appears, from the outside and increasingly from the inside, to be moving through the experience. And the patterns remain essentially unchanged because the pain that was pointing toward the necessity of changing them has been managed rather than heard. Both outcomes are possible from the current pain. The pain itself does not determine which outcome occurs. The avoidant's willingness to follow the pain to its genuine source, rather than manage it to a comfortable distance, determines which outcome occurs, and that willingness is not something you can produce, encourage, or influence from your position. It is entirely the avoidant's interior work to do or not do. There is something worth saying about the specific quality of the pain that relates to you personally rather than to the general experience of avoidant loss. Because the pain is not generic. It is not the pain of losing a relationship type or a relational dynamic. It is the pain of losing you. The specific, particular, genuinely irreplaceable person who brought specific and unusual qualities to the connection. The avoidant is missing something that cannot be substituted. This is worth stating clearly, because the substitution impulse, the reaching toward other connections as a way of managing the pain of your absence, is one of the most common avoidant responses to significant loss. And substitution is possible in the sense of finding other connections that provide other forms of relational experience. It is not possible in the sense of replacing what your specific presence was providing. What your presence was providing had specific qualities. The quality of your attention, genuinely curious, accurately perceptive, directed at the real person rather than the presented version. The quality of your patience, not the passive patience of someone waiting things out, but the active, engaged patience of someone who stayed genuinely present through the full, complicated, often testing experience of the dynamic. The quality of your honesty, consistent, clear, offered with the specific generosity of someone who communicated the truth even when the truth kept being managed rather than heard. The quality of your love, full, undefended, not rationed to the level of what the avoidant's current capacity could match, offered from genuine feeling rather than from the careful calibration of someone protecting themselves from the risk of loving more than is returned. These are not generic relational qualities. They are specifically yours, and their specific combination, in the specific way they express themselves, in the specific dynamic between two specific people, That combination is not available elsewhere, is not reproducible through the substitution impulse, is genuinely, specifically, irreplaceably absent. The pain of that specific irreplaceability is part of what is running in the avoidance interior right now, not just the loss of connection, but the loss of this connection, this quality of presence, this specific person. The avoidance relationship with the memories of the connection is doing something specific right now that is worth understanding accurately. The memories are not neutral. They are not the softened, nostalgia-organized, safely passed quality of memories that have been adequately processed and can be visited without producing significant disruption. They are live, carrying their full original weight, arriving with the specific, immediate present tense quality of something that is still active, rather than archived. The specific memories that are most live are not the dramatic ones, not the moments of obvious conflict or obvious significance. The ordinary ones, the specific, unremarkable, entirely ordinary moments of your presence that are now revealed by their absence to have been anything but unremarkable. The specific quality of an ordinary conversation, the particular texture of your ordinary attention, the way ordinary shared experience had a different quality when you were in it than the ordinary shared experience of ordinary daily life currently has without you in it. These ordinary memories are the most painful variety available in the experience of significant loss, because they demonstrate something specific about the depth of the encoding. Deep encoding in the nervous system is not primarily the encoding of peak experiences. It is the encoding of the ordinary, of the texture of daily life with a specific person present, of what mornings feel like and what evenings feel like, and what the background quality of a day is when someone who matters is part of its ordinary fabric. The avoidance ordinary days have a different quality now, and the difference is specifically, targetedly yours. Specifically, the absence of the particular quality that your ordinary presence was contributing to the ordinary texture of daily life. That specific daily ordinary fabric absence is the evidence of deep encoding, is the honest measure of how thoroughly your presence had become part of the background of a life that is now, without you, different in the ordinary moments as well as the significant ones. Something needs to be said about the avoidance relationship with the possibility of reaching out, because the pain is producing the impulse to close the distance. The genuine wanting that the pain is activating is pressing toward expression. The attachment system is doing what attachment systems do in the face of separation from a significant figure. It is producing the motivation to restore the proximity, and the reaching is not happening. Or it is happening in reduced, indirect, deniable forms that do not constitute the genuine, honest, accountable reaching that the situation actually requires. The full reaching, the direct, honest, accountable contact that carries the real weight of what the interior is processing, is not occurring, and the gap between the impulse and the action is itself producing pain. The gap exists because the full reaching requires exactly what the defensive architecture was always most specifically built to prevent: the vulnerability of going first, of showing the hand, of communicating through the act of genuine reaching the depth of the investment that the managed distance was always working to conceal, of standing in the exposed position of someone who cares enough to make the contact without the protection of knowing it will be received in any particular way. The defensive architecture is encountering the impulse to reach and intercepting it before it becomes action, qualifying it, finding reasons why the timing is not right, or the form is not clear, or the reaching might not be received well. Managing the impulse to reach in the same way that the honest communications were managed throughout the dynamic, routing it through the defenses until it arrives at the other end in a reduced, less exposed, more manageable form that does not require the full vulnerability of genuine contact. The pain of this self-interception is specific and real. The wanting is present, and the action is prevented, and the gap between them is its own form of suffering. The avoidant is in the position of someone who knows what would reduce the pain, genuine, honest, accountable contact, and cannot bring themselves to do it in the full required form, because the full required form is the most vulnerable thing available. And vulnerability is the thing the pain is competing with the fear of, and the fear has been running for longer and has deeper grooves and wins more often than the wanting does. The pain is also doing something to the avoidance relationship with other people in their life, not in a visible, dramatic, confiding in people way. In the specific, internal, comparative way of someone whose understanding of what genuine connection feels like has been revised by the experience of your presence and is now encountering the ordinary relational landscape with a different calibration. The ordinary connections of the avoidance life, the acquaintances, the colleagues, the casual friendships maintained at the specific, comfortable, emotionally manageable distance that the avoidance relational world typically operates at, are not providing what your connection was providing. And they were not expected to provide it before the experience of your connection established the comparison. Before your presence created the specific reference point of what genuine, perceptive, fully present engagement feels like as a daily relational experience. Now the comparison exists, and the ordinary connections, measured against it, are producing a specific awareness of what they do not provide. Not a critical awareness, not the judgment of the ordinary connections as insufficient, the honest, comparative awareness of the specific difference between the quality of engagement your presence made available and the quality of engagement that the ordinary relational landscape provides. This awareness is painful in a quiet, persistent way that is different from the acute pain of the disrupted attachment system. It is the specific, ongoing, daily encountered pain of a standard having been established and the current experience consistently falling short of it. Of knowing from direct experience what was available and finding that the available landscape does not currently provide it. Of having had access to the real thing and now navigating a world in which the real thing is specifically, personally absent. Here is the honest accounting of what all of this pain means for you and what, if anything, it changes about your situation. It changes nothing about what you should do. Your genuine departure, your honest reorientation toward your own life. Your complete and genuine choosing of yourself over the continuation of a dynamic that was consistently insufficient. None of that is revised by the honest acknowledgement that the departure produced real pain in the person you left. The production of pain in someone else through the honest exercise of self-determination is not cruelty. It is not something that requires guilt or revision or the softening of the genuine shift you made. People in genuine pain are not automatically entitled to relief from the source of the pain. The avoidance pain was produced by the natural consequence of choices made over time. Those choices were theirs. The consequence, including the pain, is theirs. Your role was to finally stop absorbing the cost of those choices, in the form of your own chronic, unacknowledged suffering. Your departure was not an act of aggression against the avoidant. It was the honest withdrawal of availability from a dynamic that was not adequately honoring it. What the pain does change is the completeness of the picture. The honest understanding of what the dynamic was, what it cost on both sides, and what your presence was actually worth. The pain is the honest measure of the worth. The specific, significant, daily experienced quality of what is being felt on the other side of your absence is the most accurate available accounting of what the presence was providing. Not the accounting the dynamic was offering while it was running. The management strategies were preventing that accounting from being honest while the comfortable configuration was available. The real accounting, the one only available in the conditions of genuine loss. You were worth more than the dynamic was returning. The pain confirms it. Not as something you needed confirmed, the worth was always yours and never dependent on the avoidance recognition to be real. As the honest, finally accurate, cannot be managed away acknowledgement of something that was always true and is now, in the specific form of the pain your absence produced, undeniably visible. The pain is real. You are also real. Your life, building itself in the genuine, forward-moving, daily accumulation of someone who chose themselves completely, is real and is happening and does not require the avoidance suffering to justify its direction or validate its momentum. Go build it. The accounting on their side is honest and significant and entirely theirs to carry forward into whatever genuine reckoning it eventually produces or fails to produce. Yours is the life in front of you, fully inhabitable, completely yours, right now.